All right, welcome everybody to another episode of, I would assume it's at least top 50 podcasts in all of the remodeling world. I don't know exactly where it shows up, but welcome to Remodelers on the Rise. One thing I do know is that there's people listening and it is helping people, and that is what this is all about, is just to give you, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Remodeler, new ideas, fresh ideas to help you continue to improve your business. And I have Michael Anschel today, OA Design and Build in beautiful, chilly, as far as when we're recording this, Minneapolis. Thank you for being here, Michael.
Excited to be here. Thanks, Kyle.
Excellent. Is it chilly? I assume.
It's pretty nice out. It's like 20 degrees. It's comfortable.
Sounds gorgeous. I have one Minneapolis story, and it's an embarrassing one, so I'm not going to tell it.
Does it involve cold weather?
No, it was actually summertime.
Oh, all right.
We'll see. If you remember to ask me about it before we hang up on this recording, I will share it. If you don't remember it, I'm not going to share it.
All right. So that's the deal.
But it's got to be at the very end.
All right.
Wait a minute, Kyle, before we leave. All right. So the topic we're going to talk about today is transparency. And I think the best way to kind of get into it is there's an article that was in Remodeling Magazine back in 2017. And I was reading through that in prep for our recording here. And I thought I'm going to read just kind of the opening parlay of that, and that'll springboard us into the conversation. So what the fine author said was, every remodeling sales presentation is a tug of war. The homeowners are pulling for a price breakdown, partly because they're weary of being overcharged, but also because they need to make informed decisions about trade-offs that affect their budget. The remodeler is pulling in the other direction and wants to reveal only the total cost of the job, partly because it's easier, but also to avoid questions about markup and profit. Instead of resisting client requests for a cost breakdown, Michael Anschel lays all his cards on the table. It sounds like a nightmare, but it works like a dream. I mean, that's pretty good writing.
That's a good lead-in. I did not write that. That's James.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. And it really, I think, just centers the conversation of what we're after here. So why don't you just kind of talk about laying the cards on the table? We talked about kind of this little tug of war. I would say, let me add two more things. One, I have found Michael over the years just to be somebody that is well-respected in our industry. He's a very well-respected and trusted remodeler builder, but he's also somebody that's done a lot of speaking. And we were going to record this a few weeks ago, and it was the first time we had gotten the chance to talk, and maybe real briefly before. But after about 45 minutes, I'm like, okay, I guess we're not recording it today. Just really enjoyed getting to know each other. So I wanted to also just put that in there, that me as somebody that's deep within this this industry, this vertical, Michael's been somebody that, especially in remodelers community and different places, that's just willing to share and frankly has a little bit of a unique perspective on this important topic. So wanted to give you a little bona fides there.
Cool.
So share with us, talk to us.
Yeah. Well, changing that dynamic, that's, it wasn't born out of that place, but it is been such a dramatic result from heading down this path of transparency. And I've had some great conversations with folks online, in person, around the country, because there's such strong feelings about this one. But we've been at this for 25 years, and we spent the bulk of that time doing what I think most folks do, which was, there's a project, you get a bunch of estimates from a bunch of your vendors, you send your drawings out to your lumber yard maybe, or you try to do your own takeoff, you add up all the numbers. And, I had been trained, like so many others, that I should use a kind of a gross multiplier. 145, which later became 168, and it was a magic number, and you would get graded by your peers on whether or not you were hitting that 168 on every project. And it was fine for certain projects, it worked, but other times it didn't make any sense. Past client wanted a boiler replaced. Well, I couldn't very well go in there and put a 168 on something they could call the utility to get pricing on. It would be weird. Or there'd be the project where it's gotten a little bit bigger than they wanted. They want to reduce the cost of the project, and they want to help understand what's driving it. And so now I'm playing the shell game of, hide my margin and I had a bunch of it in cabinets, and then cabinets got pulled way back, and now I got to like distribute it across plumbing.
Or you lose your markup there.
Or you lose it.
Yeah.
And you spend hours and hours and hours trying to move pieces around. And if they start to look back at previous versions, like things are moving and they don't understand why. And it's just not a comfortable place to be. And I thought, I definitely don't like being on the receiving end of that. If I was a homeowner soliciting bids, I wouldn't want to be kept in the dark, and I would be frustrated by that process. And we're a service industry, and how can we change that dynamic and make it work for both sides of us? And if they're always asking about it and they're always curious about it, why not just go there, right? But the origin, I think I mentioned this when we talked last time, the origin of that whole bit really sprung from an internal discussion with staff about what does a project actually cost. And we realized that we weren't really doing a great job of tracking management, additional hours, admin, like all of the things that feed into a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's usually just captured in your markup.
It's kind of, and it's this big, gross, nebulous thing. And so, okay, so if we've got running a 40% margin, we're doing a 68% markup, why is it at the end of the year, I'm netting 8%? What's happening? That's a big distance. That's a massive distance to go from, right? And how can we drill down and get a better understanding of what our real costs are? Like, what does it really take to execute a project? And then we can be more accurate in our estimating internally, and we can do a better job of predicting cash flow and profit. And if there are certain jobs that are higher risk, that are requiring more management that we didn't expect, maybe 168 is the wrong number, and vice versa. Maybe that single trade, client wants a new roof. That's one phone call. Is that worthy of a 168? And are we not being competitive and losing business as a result of that, and appearing more expensive than we really are because it's a single trade and we're using this gross markup thing? And then we had this kind of epiphany moment, which, it's good to go in deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting super thorough in our estimating. We're thinking about sharing those numbers with our clients, and how are they going to react to that? We're kind of testing the waters. And then I had this moment where it's like, marking up the stuff, and people are going to disagree with me out there, but it's fundamentally kind of wrong. I'm the contractor, then I'm the agent of the client, and they're paying me for my services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I should really be communicating to them what my fees are to execute the project, and then I don't have to care what the stuff is, right? Does that make sense? So
yes. Let me hang on. Let me hold back. Let me hold back the masses who are like, "What do you mean I don't deserve charging that markup is wrong?" Just everybody relax. Let the man talk. Carry on.
So all right. So you want granite, right? We're gonna pick out a slab of granite. It comes in a bunch of different colors and different grades, and we're gonna hold some hands and we're gonna pick the right stone. Great. And I'm going to charge you $170 an hour to walk with you and pick out that stone. That's it. That's in my design fees. And you're great with it. Wonderful. Okay. Now you picked a level 3 granite, and then you change your mind. You want a level 4 granite. My process as your contractor didn't change. I still have to facilitate the measuring, the fabricating, the install, the warranty of a piece of granite. So my process didn't change. Why did my price change? And for the client, like if I was to put myself in their shoes, how does that feel? How does that feel? And when you try that on, it doesn't feel great. And so if I can
pause there, and I hope I don't throw you off.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I think are really interesting for everybody to be listening to. The last part, which is and then I put that on as the client, and I said, how does that feel? And you're like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think what I want, like, people will listen to this whole thing, and at the conclusion of it might be like, you know what? I love still putting a full, my project in one number. And because there's pros and cons to all of this. You agree with that?
There are absolutely pros and cons. And I think when we get to the end of the conversation, folks will realize that there's no difference. At the end of the day, it's the same thing.
So yeah. Got it. So there's pros and cons, but that last part of just putting yourself in the customer's shoes and the client's shoes. And then frankly, as you're going through the backtrack of this and the origin of this, what all of us as business owners need to be thinking about is we can't just be stuck in our ways. This is the way we've always done it. There is nothing wrong with the mental exercise of going through the process. Should we change this? Why do we do this? Challenging why we do things. Mm-hmm. Thinking about how does this impact my client? That is a good thing to go through. You might end up keeping a similar process. You may tweak it. You may change it. But I love the business mind that's going into just you going through this process, which is we just started thinking about it. And, oh, wait a minute. Now that we started thinking about this, we thought about this. And then we're like, what if we did that? That's smart. That's good business. So anyways, I wanted to.
No, I mean, I was just thinking like when I was thinking like skate or die when I was a kid, but really it's change or die. And then I was thinking about this cool statistic that, over time on the planet Earth, the number of species that have managed to exist beyond a certain age or certain period in time all have a common characteristic. Like millions of species go extinct, right? Mm-hmm. But the ones that manage to continue on, it's like 3% of all species, all have a common trait, and they all have the ability to adapt. And it's adaptability that allows you to survive and thrive and be successful. So yeah.
You said we were going deep. I mean, we're going species. We're going okay. All right. So let's stick with this tug of war, and also I guess continue with your story because there's a little cliffhanger before I interrupted.
There's an evolution, but I'll give away the ending. How about that?
Sure.
We still present a single number at the end of the day, right? People get really confused about the difference between itemized or line item or whatever. People got the little buzzwords that make them angry. They're little trigger words, right? There's a radical difference between transparency and line item pricing. Those are not the same thing. They don't mean the same thing. How you present the numbers is entirely up to you, right? But transparency requires accuracy and detail. If you choose to show it, it has to be something. You have to have something to show, and that has to be honest. The thing that you're showing can't be fiction. If you show a fiction, you're screwed, right? They're going to catch you in the fiction. So, the emperor's new clothes and all that, right? You can't go out there and be like, we're doing this, but there's nothing to show. If it's all fluff underneath there, it's not going to work.
So tell us more about that, because even I'm kind of like, okay, so what does that mean? So we're being transparent. They're seeing things, but at the end of the day, it's one number. Give us some more understanding of that.
Right. So in this epiphany moment about what is the relationship between contractor and client, whether we're in the design mode or we're in the construction mode, because we're design build, we do both. And what is our obligation as a contractor? Contractor is paid a fee, a service fee. We're in a service industry. We work for our clients, and we love to get indignant about how our clients don't get us and how they're always trying to nickel and dime us. But we, at the same time, are completely unwilling to be honest and open with them. I mean, it's no wonder that they don't trust us because we don't trust them. And so you've got this constant tug of war or fighting to who can mistrust the other side of it, right? And every contractor still is happy to post, I found a deal on this piece of equipment. I found this for less, right? We do the exact same things that our clients do, and we don't ever recognize that that's just part of this human relationship. So if we're going to change that dynamic, then we need to just get real and get comfortable about what we charge. What we charge is what we charge. There it is. And the stuff in between is all of the stuff that they are selecting. And what we're getting paid for is helping them navigate the stuff they're picking, the installation of the stuff, the movement of the stuff from point A to point B, the ordering of the stuff, overseeing the guys who put the stuff together, inspectors, all of that stuff, and also managing the client. So we came up with like these 13 categories of the things that we do. And we started out with taking that 168 multiplier, right? And breaking it across the categories. So now it's broken into little pieces.
Give me one example of one of the categories.
Material procurement.
Okay. So as an example, like if I mark it up 1.68, part of that markup is the time that we are taking to order materials, to receive materials, to check, make sure, to deliver sometimes.
Right.
So where you're going with that is we tried to break that up and say, well, is that 2% of my markup? Is that 3%? It depends on the project. So got it.
Exactly. 168 was born. The origin of 168 it was basically contractors are stupid, right? That's the origin of 168. Contractors are too dumb and too unable to work a calculator or work a spreadsheet to accurately track and understand what management and admin is required to execute a project. And because contractors are too stupid, we're going to give the industry a really simple tool, and they can just go get their cogs, put them together, and put this number on it, and they'll be good.
Now, luckily, you're talking about contractors and not remodelers.
Not remodelers.
Because I only have remodelers listening to it, but they're smart, correct?
Remodelers are super smart, and builders are super smart. I mean, the problem with 168, it doesn't give us credit. You know, we all use Excel. We can all work in spreadsheets. We build houses. We remodel complex structures. Yet what? We can't figure out how many hours of management, overhead, and admin it takes. I think that just sells us short. You know? So
the example you were given of, we got about 13 different categories, and we started to really wrestle with, you know, what type of cost or what type of percentage should be on each of those.
Yep. So the easy way was we just took what we already had, right? And we broke it across those categories. And then we began the process over a number of years of measuring and finding out which of these things were kind of, because we guessed, were close, and which of them were wildly off, and did it change by project? So that was the first step. The second was then, as part of that function, is to then put our overhead as a line and our profit as a line, so that they are identified. And what we found that does is it allows us to, let's say we estimate a kitchen, right? Got all our parts and pieces, we got all our management, we've got all our fees, and we've got our overhead on that. For us, we set at 20%, and our profit is set at 18%. That's for us. But those numbers could be whatever you want. Whatever overhead is a function, you can figure that out, and profit is whatever you decide you want it to be. Once we've identified what those things are, we put them in a little box and we lock it. Now, everything else in the project is up for grabs.
Even your management line items.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we're now going through and dissecting the project in greater detail, maybe we determined that we have, we used a generic kitchen management code for this project, but it's a really straightforward kitchen and we don't need that many hours. So let's take some of them out. Or it's a really complicated kitchen. It doesn't fit into that basic thing. And the homeowner is a pain in the ass, and they're going to require a ton of additional management. And those numbers need to grow. Those can all more accurately reflect the reality of the project. And then and
your overhead and your profit number is based on a estimated project budget?
Estimated project budget. Yeah.
Okay.
And I will argue that having those, if the project undergoes a massive change, then going back and tweaking those is appropriate. But if it doesn't, um, I think you can feel comfortable leaving them, and you don't need to have that dialed in to the penny to be an accurate. There's no Bible that says you're a failed remodeler if you, on this project, your overhead as a reflection of project was off by 1/8%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You should have a sense of what your annual output is, and you should have a sense of what your annual overhead is. And
So you look at it almost like, I may have gotten nicked a little bit on this one, but, I may have been a little higher on this one, like on the whole, as long as your average is where you need it to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole discussion about how do you figure out what your overhead is, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always an estimate of what you expect for the year based on revenue, based on profit, right? It's always an estimate. And profitability is a hope. It's a goal, right? But I think that the reason I say set them aside and then go back and tweak the rest, and don't feel like you have to go back and make those modifications there, because the goal is to end the project with those things intact. And if you've done a good job of being detailed and thorough in the parts and the implementation of the parts, when you do your post-mortem, right, at the end of the project, and you're like estimated versus actuals going back and forth, they should be pretty close. Like, the goal is accuracy.
Yeah.
The goal is not,
so
I made a ton of money on that job. It's
got it. So I'm going to link to the article. I said Remodeling Magazine, but I apologize to Professional Remodeler Magazine, because it's actually in Pro Remodeler. It's proremodeler.com/big-reveal, REVEAL. So even if you want to type it in, or it'll be in the show notes as well. But one of my big goals here was just to understand how you approach things, and just based on what you're describing to me, based on, especially when I look at some of the examples in this article, we've got 3 main categories. We've got kind of our trade contractor bids, and probably materials is also in there. We got our supervisory time. So a couple other examples of that would be, to conduct permit application, zoning and plan review, to order materials like you were talking about, to load in, return, and exchange materials, trade-specific city inspections, ongoing project accounting, or each of those. And then we have our overhead, and we have our profit that goes into that. So at the end, I see where you're going at, where our overhead is this percent, our profit is this percent, and then everything else will fluctuate as we go through the design, as we go through the detailed specifications of this project, and we zero in on that. But your client, at the end of the day, feels like they have some insight and some understanding of the moving parts and the moving pieces, and at the end of the day has a fixed price contract, with one number at the bottom that they're signing. Am I tracking?
Yeah, I'll go back one step. The client might never see any of that. Right? There's no the primary purpose of that whole exercise is internal, so that we are pricing the project accurately. And if you've priced it accurately, and you will feel confident when the client's like, well, I could go have this estimated. What we say is, here's our estimate. Here's our internal estimating document. Have at it.
So out of 100 clients, you may only do this with 10 or 12 of them. Show them that. So here's, I'll get to that. Let's hold a second. No, hey, Michael, yeah. I am the host. When I ask a question, the question gets answered. This is my show, man. I asked it. No, go ahead.
Okay. So it's always there. This is our deal. We use a system called Clear Estimates. We have a detailed estimate. It's, X number of pages long. When we're in a design meeting and we're going through stuff, that document is sitting on the table. It is within the client's grasp. Sometimes they'll pick it up and flip through it. Sometimes they don't.
Interesting.
If you put the cookies in the cookie jar and you tell the kids they can't have the cookies and you put it on top of the refrigerator, it's a matter of minutes before they've got a chair and you hear, right? If it's just always available, it loses all of its mystique and its interest.
So how often do you use the word transparency? I mean, is that coming out and up often or not?
Sales, on the sales side.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why you want to remodel with us is that, there's no black box. It's fully transparent. and you can see everything. So you get
So you
to
talk about that a lot up front. You talk about that a lot in the sales process. And then frankly, once they sign it, you're going through design. Some people will want to really see it. Other people are just so excited about the design and the comfort and trust that you've developed that they don't touch the cookies.
I'd say 70% of our clients don't look at it.
Interesting.
They might flip through it. One of the, might flip for a second and that's it. We have then others who say, hey, and it's always when the project got more expensive. Like if we say that looks like an $85,000 kitchen and we go through design and we get in, it's like 83 something, they never feel the need to go to look at it, right?
Sure.
But if we get into a project and they've added and added and added, and now we're, $150,000 when we should have been $100,000. Well, how do we get there? Well, let's take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how are we going to get it down? I don't know. You tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Here are our numbers. So, let's work on this together. It changes.
Advocate.
Tug of war no longer. Now you're sitting on the same side of the table, going through the same spreadsheets, looking at the same materials, and trying to make informed decisions together to solve for X. I mean, the whole thing is we're solving for X, right?
Yeah. So tell me what's in your overhead, where you got 20%, you got the 18% of the profit. Give me some insight and kind of what's included or not included in those numbers. So what I guess where I'm going at with that is when we get into the management line items, how much of some of those overhead costs might be captured in the management items or not? Give me a little insight into what's in that.
That's a good question.
That's more like it, Michael. Now you're gaining back you're putting me back on the podium of like, okay, it's your show. It's a good question. Now we're getting
fantastic question.
This tug of war that we're having now it's advocate. Now we're together. We're a team. Go ahead.
I think the easiest way to think about what belongs on this side of the line and what belongs on this side of the line is to ask the question, if that project didn't exist, then what functions of management and overhead would still exist?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the production manager's sole job is the project. If I don't have a project, I have no need for a production manager, right?
Yep.
So their time needs to be distributed across these projects. They have to be accounted for within the projects. The project manager's time is mostly spent on projects, but also some team meetings, some company, right? There's other stuff. Admin. Well, admin does the invoicing, receives billing on the projects, process them, lien waivers, certificates of insurance liability. They wouldn't be doing those activities if that project didn't exist. So a portion of your admin's time can be directly ascribed to the project. Right?
Go back and rewind that. That's the interesting part. It's not just cost of goods sold. It's not just above the line stuff. Part of your admin's salary can be captured in some of these management line items. So that also really messes with maybe what people are used to of saying, well, how can this overhead just be 20% and this 18%? How are these numbers working? Well, you got to get into the details like what you just described.
And it can get really crazy here because this is going to blow your mind. But if you have your admin, right, if a portion of their salary is tied to that project, legally, you are allowed to pay that portion of their salary out of that project. Every state's different on this, but like in the state of Minnesota, we have we don't put project funds into a general box. Every project goes into its own account. And we have to keep we have to keep escrow accounts for every single project so that we can track dollars in and out from that project, right, for that project's expense. But that means since we have project management, labor, admin, hours directly tied to that, and they are part of that estimate, I've got 3 hours of admin, for this, I'm allowed to go in then when we get our deposit check, and I can pull that portion for that person.
Gotcha.
So in your cash flow, that opens up a huge window.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
Now I know exactly what goes. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. So two main other topics I kind of want to dig into. The second being, let me just put that out there of, if I'm somebody that's listening to this, it's kind of intriguing, it's kind of interesting. I'll be curious to hear, like, here's where you start. Even if you don't end up doing this, like, analyze this, look at this. So I want to ask that in a second. But, I think it's interesting where, I've been doing this for 12 years and most of my work is around, yes, the marketing side, but also the sales process and also helping remodelers understand their numbers. So as I've dug in and working with dozens and dozens and dozens of remodelers over the years, my experience working with a remodeler, Michael Stone's work has definitely impacted me, the Markup and Profit. If Michael was on this, he'd be like, what are you talking about?
Stone loves me. He loves me.
Good. Fixed price, he's done, but very much like a, here's your one number. You just think about so much of the teaching, so much of the coaching in our industry. And a lot of it is, we've got to get, and all of us agree, right? We've got to know our numbers. We've got to put a markup or a margin. I lean towards, yes, there's a difference between markup and margin. I a lot of times lean towards markup just for clarity and simplicity's sake. But we've also just have to be open. Like, part of what you teach and what you put out there is, what the industry's changing. Our next generation of clients are different. This next generation coming up might be thinking differently, buying differently. So I wanted you to kind of maybe just share a little bit of the fact that you said, Michael, why does Michael Stone love you? There's a direct question. Why does he love you, Michael?
Stone and I have a lot of overlap when it comes to the professional of the industry and where we, ways of being and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to estimating, he and I feel like, I think he thinks I'm a trader right now. That's okay. Dave Gerstel wrote a good book, Nail Your Numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's in that that guy knows his, that's serious. I read that to learn.
Mm-hmm.
He's on top of it. The clients are different though. And the accessibility of information, we've been talking about this since the last 20 years, right? But if I want to know what siding costs, all I type is, cost per square foot of siding, and boom, there's my answer. So if you walk in there with numbers that are radically different, it doesn't work.
But Michael, they're buying a full project from us. What's the difference between buying a full remodel project and buying a car? Do you go into your Ford dealership and ask them to break that down? What's your answer to that?
No, I hate that analogy, right?
Yeah, I assume so.
Yeah,
that's why I brought it up.
It's not a car. When you go to the store and buy a thing, it's a fully designed and assembled thing that's being sold for a price. And you make a decision as a consumer if you feel comfortable spending that money for that object. You make a value-based decision, you're done. Right? New home builders, that's what they do. A new home builder building on spec tries to guess what the market will pay for what kinds of features, materials, what shortcuts they can take on installation and performance that the homeowners won't know about, and put a product on the market. That's a product industry. And the remodeling industry is a service industry. They look nothing alike.
Tell me more.
To me, that's it, full stop. We are creating the thing as we go, right? A lot of us who are design build are helping to come up with the concept that's going to be built, right? We're starting with loosey-goosey ideas and a budget. And I think that we have an obligation. This is philosophical, right? But I think we have an obligation. I think we're better served when we are working with the client to help them solve the problem. And just, we include estimating in our design fees. So I will have on a project maybe 26 hours of estimating at $170 an hour. And it's part of our design agreement. And the client pays us to estimate the project.
Standalone fee, don't roll it into the deposit.
It's hourly.
Yeah.
And we don't give back design fees so that you'll go into build. We divorce the two processes completely, because ethically, If I'm chasing the $150,000 or $500,000 remodel, I am going to drive your project up because I think I can get you there. And I'm not, that's not what you hired me to do. You said you had $100,000 and you wanted to make your kitchen awesome. And my job is to figure out how to get that done. And I tell you, it's going to take me, 120 hours to get through that process. And this is where I'm going to put those hours in, and we're going to bill you on an hourly basis.
I think this concept, everybody listening to this should be thinking, what does that look like? What does that mean for me? This tug of war approach of customer versus me, and this little tug of war versus what would it look like? What would need to change in order for me to be my advocate, their advocate, and for us to be on the same team, wearing the same jersey, if you will. And I think what I've seen you write it, or we talked about it briefly. This does not, I think this is important here. So I'll pause.
Yeah.
Dramatic pause. Your markup is not necessarily less since you've gone this direction than before. Your profitability, should I say? Speak to that.
Yeah, well, when you get more accurate, you get more profitable. And if we reverse engineer our numbers, the reality is that we're out there at about a 184. Yeah, and we're at a 184 with a client holding the numbers in their hands, and they're happy about it.
And that should get everybody's attention, right? It's one thing, like what you were talking about earlier of like, we're better served and I'm their advocate and this and that, which can kind of lean towards, oh, what is he doing? Just cutting his pricing back so that they can see it. And you're sitting here saying, look, at the end of the day, because we're more transparent, because we're watching things closer and understanding the estimating closer, more accurately, frankly, because we're providing that service and the way that we've approached it, we're actually better than we were before. That should make people go, So right. No tug of war, advocate, and more.
And no slippage. I mean, Kyle, you've got to have clients who are like, God, I lost my shirt on that job. I don't even know what went wrong. How did it get off the rails that much? All of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like prep work. Here, I'll use a metaphor, because metaphors work, right? We all know that if you don't do good prep work before painting, the painting will suffer. And it's so much harder to go back after the primer's on and do that necessary prep work. This is kind of like that. This is like the additional time that it takes to do good prep work on your estimates that allows you to be more profitable, more exacting, and bonus, if the client says, well, how do we get there? Then you feel really confident sharing those numbers. I really think the people who are opposed to transparency don't really have a strong, someone's going to send me a hate email, but I'm going to suppose. Yeah.
Trust me, I'm your intermediary. I'll keep the people at bay. Plus everybody that listens to my stuff are nice. I draw out the nice, sweet people.
I'll use
what was your punchline? But you're about to insult them.
I think that they're not as tight as they know they need to be on that side, and they're kind of embarrassed about showing the client. I'll use another analogy, right? If you're going to the beach, and I don't know if you're like me, like I like to keep my shirt on at the beach, because I'm 46 and I'm not in the kind of shape that I wish I was. If I were like, if my obliques and all that stuff were like well defined, I would feel great about taking off my shirt. I would be like, I don't care. Like,
so you're saying at OA Design Build, we are like ripped and six-pack and this and that. So it's like, look, all you want. Is that the analogy you're going for? I get it. By the way, I get it. I understand. Yeah. No, I understand it. So if you're a remodeler who's kind of intrigued by this, like what are some first steps other than, like, I think listening to this, maybe again, reading that article, I think there's a Prezi presentation that maybe we'll put in the show notes that you sent me over as well. Is that cool?
Sure. Yeah.
But where else would they start? Like, what are the first couple steps that if you were kind of rewind the clock, you're back in that seat of kind of wanting to explore this, what do you say they should do first?
I'd say, great. Deconstruct your gross markup. And I think I had a formula that I threw together, which was we know what our COGS are, cost of goods sold, right?
Yep.
But we don't know what our what our COPE is, our cost of project execution, right? And
Did you make that up?
I did.
That's good.
COGS plus COPE, right? That's your project times, right?
Yep.
Whatever you choose for your profit.
Overhead and profit. Yep.
Right? And then also COGS plus COPE times whatever you choose for your, So those are two independent multipliers, and they can be independent multipliers. Go back and find out what know your overhead. That's a good place to start.
Yep.
So, and then figure out what portion of a project, like what do you need to put on every project to cover your overhead? Great. That's a good one. Now you've got that out of the way. Now go to the projects and say, okay, I want my profit on these projects to be X%. Okay, put that out of the way. Now figure out what is it going to take to get there. And I think percentages are a fine way to start, because you can plug a total project cost into a simple spreadsheet that will spit out, if you decide 12 codes or 15 management codes, however you want to break up the management over, all the admin and management of the project, and then kind of run it in the background silently. Like, don't change
there's no reason, even if I haven't done this on the estimating side, there's no reason that this $100,000 kitchen project, that we don't start tracking each of our, I spent X number of hours on material ordering, this ordering, that ordering. That's going to really start to open your head up to things, right?
There's a cool app. It's called Clockify. It's on your phone or whatever, and you just stop whenever you start a task, and it'll generate a little report.
Yeah.
Tell your project managers that they have to start tracking their time against projects, just to see. It's nothing to do with how they get paid. It's just so that you can start to get a grasp of where your real costs are, and then how can you start to assign those to different projects. And I'd say it's not an overnight process. It takes a year or two. But if it's running in the background, see what kind of a change it makes to those total project costs. And then when you have a client who you feel comfortable with, who, if they ask the question, try it out.
Yeah. And I think that's where, even if you're not going this direction, to understand what percentage of time or how much time for, let's say you just have this is my bread and butter sweet spot project, this $80,000, to track how many hours we're spending on true project management, on material ordering, on this. It's smart either way. Even if you're not going to go this direction, it's still smart to start breaking that down. It's going to make you a better estimator. It's going to make your projects more profitable. And then I can see very easily how once you get that kind of wrapped around, you open up clear estimates. And I assume that when you start a new kitchen project, you've got a nice template. It's got kind of some rough hours for each of those from years of doing this, right? And now all of a sudden we're plugging in, we're going to adjust it based on this project. I'm so happy that it makes so much more sense to me now, because even just reading online and this and that. The other thing I just want to encourage is I think people will enjoy listening to this. People will kind of like, how does this work? How does that work? Shut up if you're like going to complain or whine or like, well, he's doing it this way. That's stupid. And it should be. No, we're here to learn. Like, you're out here, you're doing this recording, spending an hour of your time, not so that you can pick fights, but you want to help the industry. You're not doing this so that you can become more profitable. I haven't found a Michael Anschel course that you can sign up for to learn this method. You're just giving and you're doing presentations. So like, put that in your guys' heads of not like, well, I do it this way, and I learn, consider, think, try, ask a question, but we don't need to, none of this tug of war, frankly. Like, it's another good example of like, we're kind of just all trying to get better. Yeah. People won't do that anymore.
They're good at beating each other up. It's
yeah. But you notice my remodelers community, I just don't like to put up with that stuff. Like, we're here to learn, right?
And I to that point, Kyle, we all do better when we all do better. I firmly believe that. And I learned a ton from my peers when I was in NARI locally here, who taught me so much. And if I listened to them, if I really listened to what they were saying early on, I would have been way more successful earlier on. It took me a long time to really hear it. But yeah, I think that when we share that stuff with each other, we all have an opportunity to grow and evolve and adapt.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. So I don't know if you want to give some of your contact info out, or if you want to just point people towards your website, anything you'd like to share there?
Sure. So, Michael Anschel, you find me on Facebook, and OA Design Build is, we're also OA on Design Builds on Facebook, and depending on the group, I'm one or the other. I'll be in Wisconsin at the B4 conference, the Better Buildings, Better Business conference, early March, and I will actually be doing a lecture on transparency,
Okay.
as well as a bunch of
So
building
anybody who
supplies.
wants to come and boo them, come on up.
Come on, boo me. Or have a beer afterwards, and we can talk about stuff.
Love it.
Twitter at Michael Anschel, and email Michael at oadesignbuild.com. And yes, I'm happy to share a PDF of one of our estimates if you want to look at it. It's also in the Prezi. It's also in the magazine article. So we are being transparent with our own transparency, and have, cool thing, we've learned a lot. Like, there have been changes that we've made over the few years, sharing our systems with other folks who've come back and given us really good feedback. And it's a wonderful thing.
Love that. No, I appreciate you making the time, bud.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. This is
You bet.
tons of fun. Yeah.
You bet.
Cool.
So
now what? Your Minnesota embarrassing story.
I was just wondering if you're going to bring it up or not. It is embarrassing. I almost didn't want you to bring it up, but you know that the millions of Remodelers on the Rise listeners are like, don't tell us a story. So it is kind of embarrassing, but whatever. I was little. My father's sister, I call her Auntie M. Her name's Mary. I always called her Auntie M. It's just been our thing. Her and Uncle Don lived in Minneapolis in the Twin Cities. They had a dog named Bear, where if you saw the dog, you'd be like, yeah, that's I get why you call her Bear, him Bear. And we're driving. We took a little summer trip. I must have been, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, something like that. And it was one of those things where, Dad, I got to pee. We're almost there, son. Dad, I have to pee. I hadn't seen Auntie M and Uncle Don in like years, and it was the worst ever that I had to pee, to the point where we finally got out of the car. I could not make it into the house. I went over to the bush, and they're right outside their house, and that's how Auntie M and Uncle Don saw me, is peeing on their bush in the front yard because it was so bad. I just had to go. It's kind of embarrassing, but that's my Minnesota story.
Kind of a cute story. I thought it was going to be a poison ivy, or that there's always like
No, just a little Kyle, little boy, 8-year-old Kyle, who just needed to pee really bad, and we've all been there too. Of like, hold on to it. Get there. We'll be there in a minute. Just hang on. Like, my dad didn't want to stop at the gas station like a mile away, right?
Right.
Anyways, it made me a better father, because I would never tell my 4 children to hold it. I would say, of course, I will immediately
pull it over right now, side of the road. Yeah. There you go.
And now that I think about it, I think I've done the same thing. But it has been a pleasure. Very good topic, very interesting topic, and a topic that we just all need to keep thinking about and keep working at. And we really appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and your years of experience at this. It was great.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. Appreciate it.
You take care.
All right. See ya.